everybody, this is Chris with the Mill Run in Western Maryland, and today we're working on this RS2 Erie Lackawanna locomotive number 906. It's an old AHM, and the problem I'm having with it is originally when I bought this at the train show for $10, it ran. I put some traction tires on it, and it ran okay. It wouldn't go in reverse. But then, as time progressed, the running okay turned into not running at all. So I have taken the motor in it completely apart, cleaned it up, and it ran for a few moments and then went back to not running at all. So I'm going to say that there's some serious wear in that motor. And what I have here is another motor out of one of these things. It came from some parts that a buddy of my dad's had. So I'm going to try to take two motors and make one. So I'm just figured I'd take you all along for the ride. To take the shell off these older AHM RS3s, you have a screw here and a screw here right in the foot plates. On the newer versions of them, AHM got a little cheaper with their driveline and how they're set up. And there will be little tabs here that you would take loose. And then there's a clip back here. But anyway, this just will lift straight up. I've already got the screws loose. It fits pretty snug. This is a very basic locomotive. It has a very thin frame. It's just a flat piece of steel. Actually, it's a flat piece of steel that's bent too. That's odd. Anyhow, it's not a very complicated motor. I'm hoping this will go well. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the brushes, which they are held in very simply by spring pressure. There's AHM uses a fine wire spring that puts pressure against one brush and pressure against the other. It's just a V shape, and that keeps the brushes in place. One of the ends of the wire has an insulator on it so that it does not ground or short the circuit out. So what we're going to do is remove those brushes, and that's as simple as removing that wire from the brushes or pulling the brushes off the tab, which is probably what I'm going to do here. So just pull the brush off the tab, remove that wire. It'll rest up against the stud where the brush was, and we'll take the brush out. The brushes look fairly good. And also fitted in behind the brush is the headlight terminal. That's where the headlight gets its power. And let's see here. We got this other brush out. Alright, we gotta be careful of this spring wire. It doesn't fly out of there. Alright, the top of this motor is held in with two screws. I'm gonna go ahead and take the screws out. These screws are self-tapped into the plastic, so they can be pretty tight. Now that our wires and our screws are removed, I'm going to take the top off this motor. Now, be very careful. Some of these motors have bushings, and I don't know if you can really see this here. There are two really small washers in here that provides a different spacing for the armature and the motor. You want to make sure that you don't lose those when you take these apart. Okay, so my plan here is I don't think there's anything physically wrong with the shell part of this motor. I'm going to start by just simply taking the armature out of one and putting it in the other. Now, in order to remove the armature, we're going to have to take the worm gear off the bottom, which is located in the drive section of our truck. So we're going to flip this thing over. And this is an older AHM, got the typical metal plate, the two screws in it. Some of the AHMs, the screw closest to the knuckle actually had a nut on the end of it. This does not, which is handy because that that can be very difficult. I know the old C-liners had those. Now when you remove this cap, the side part here with the bearing housing and the springs comes off. This has to go on before you can put your cap back on. You can't do it either. This does not snap on. The screws for the cap actually hold this on. Okay, so here we are. We've got our drive system. Probably the easiest way to get to this is to remove everything in here. So it's just be careful to remember the direction everything goes. So I'm just going to put everything out here on the table the way that it came out. So they come right back in the same way. Oops. Go. It's got some grease on it. Alright, get this out of here. Come on. So what I'm going to do here is this worm gear's got to come off the shaft. Now it's just pressed on. So I'm going to try to get located down here on a section of this worm gear that is fairly sturdy, and we're just going to kind of slightly pry up on it. Nope, there she's starting to move. Not putting too much pressure on it because A, you don't want to accidentally clip your worm gear off, and B, you want to make sure you don't strip the threads out or the spline out. And she's off. It's tough. Don't get me wrong. It's really pressed on there. Okay, so now this should just slide off. Again, you want to watch for bushings and things like that. Use magnets. Okay, it's out. There is a bushing down in there. It is still in place. I'm just going to leave it there. Interesting note about these particular motors in the AHM. This bottom ring is your magnet. This piece right here. This is your magnet. I'll show you in this one. So this piece here is your magnet. These are just two pieces of metal. They get their magnetism from this. So theoretically, these things will come out, and you can disassemble this completely. Now I've had two of these motors apart, this one and this one. Both of them, this bottom magnet has this real charred look to it. I guess it was just a poor metal or whatnot, but they all look like that. Okay, so we've pulled our armature out. We're getting ready to put our new armature in, and we're going to see if this fixes our problem. Alright, so we've carefully inspected our new armature here. We've cleaned it up, took a brush, got some isopropyl alcohol, cleaned up the armature a little bit. So now we're going to drop her in and see if we can get this thing back together. So we got our bushings in place. Move our magnets to the side. It's in. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put our worm gear on. Just basically do this in reverse of what I did. Failed to mention that you want to be careful to notice where your shaft is on your worm gear when you pull this thing out, because you don't want to get it too far down. You kind of want to try to put it in the same place. Now this one won't go down any further, so I'm going to say it's right where it used to be. Alright, we're going to go ahead and turn this thing over. Inspect everything. Alright, let's put the truck back in. Put the truck back together. Here's the way. Alright, I've got a couple bushings here. This one's like a felt, and one is like a copper. I am not sure how these should go on. I know the way that they were on there just when I took it apart, but I'm not sure about. Well, we're just going to go with the way that it was. Well, so far so good. We have a free turning motor. We'll go ahead and put our screws in to hold the cap on. I'm really hoping this fixes the problem because it is a nice little locomotive. It is old. AHM's an older company. This is an older design. A lot of AHM's diesels and a lot of their motors were high strung, and I mean that in the sense that they ran at fast speeds. They weren't low speed locomotives, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We've just come a long way in the model railroad industry. So we're going to go ahead and flip this in here. I'm going to put our brushes in first before I put in the connections for our headlight. Okay, we got our bare chassis in place here with our newly gone over, I don't know if you want to call it rebuild or not, motor. So we're just going to see if she'll power up here in the yard. Let's see what happens. So far we've got nothing. Oh, got a bright light for a moment. Something's trying to happen here, I can't tell. I can see the armature just kind of twinge, but nothing's really taking place. Okay, y'all, a little bit off camera work here because as you saw, our test kind of yielded no results. We had the same problem. The armature would kind of glitch, but it wouldn't move. I took it and I checked the pickups in the back truck, as you can see here. Everything looked good. There were no breaks in the wires. The pickups were good. The axles were insulated. There should be no problems there. So, putting it back on the track, testing a few other things, I noticed that whenever you would power it up, one of these metal plates, this one right here, would shift. And that is a pretty good amount of movement. And it would get stuck in the armature. So, as a last-ditch effort, I took everything back apart like we saw at first. And the only thing you have to do here is twist this out to a certain position and it will unlock from the chassis. I slid the entire motor assembly out, swapped everything over to the donor motor shell, and put it back in. For an AHM of this age, that's pretty good low speed. And she's fixed. I was pretty shocked that that's what was going on because this cap here actually holds these metal plates in place, but there was just enough room there for that to shift, and that locked her up. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is probably a common issue. I could be wrong. This could probably be fixed. In fact, what I'm going to do is these will just slide out. You slide out the magnet with it. I'm probably going to put some glue back here and glue this thing back together. Assemble it using the armature that I had originally. Maybe test it out. Keep it as a spare. This could happen another time with another locomotive. Well, this has been fun. Let's put this thing back together and let her walk on the main line a little bit.
As you can see, this thing runs like a completely different engine. Seeing this repair turn out like this is very gratifying. We've taken a vintage locomotive that could have very well ended up in somebody's trash can and brought it back to life. I hope you enjoyed this project and that possibly it inspired you to experiment in repairing your very own AHM RS2. So hey, don't forget to hit the like button on your way out and subscribe to help my channel grow. So until next time, I'm Chris with the Mill Run in Western Maryland. Thank you for watching.